Every year, millions of animals suffer and die in UK laboratories. The BUAV went undercover to expose the reality of life and death in one such laboratory. What we found is shocking. The UK government is failing in its duty to minimize animal suffering and enforce the use of available alternatives. Our research has also uncovered a loophole in the law which allows animals to continue to suffer dreadfully in tests for a product that, although licensed for medical use, could very well end up being used, quite legally, for cosmetic purposes. Despite a UK and EU ban on the use of animals for cosmetic testing, the reality is that tens of thousands of animals continue to be subjected to appalling suffering and often a very painful death, largely for the sake of human vanity. Here at Wickham Laboratories, horrific poisoning tests, the archaic LD50, take place on hundreds of mice every week for a product called Dysport, which contains botulinum toxin, or Botox. Dysport is manufactured by Ipsen and licensed in the UK for the treatment of some relatively rare medical conditions. Dysport is one of a group of products commonly referred to as Botox. Botox is now very often also used for cosmetic purposes, as a temporary treatment for facial wrinkles and lines. Ipsen may use different laboratories, but the LD50 Botox tests are always very similar, whatever the final use of the Botox. Few people are aware of the continual cycle of cruelty and suffering that is being inflicted in the manufacturing of every batch of Dysport and many other Botox products. The LD50 is one of the cruelest and most controversial tests carried out on animals. Mice are injected with the botulinum toxin into the abdomen.
The needle goes in about halfway at 45 degrees.
Within hours, signs of poisoning start to show. Many mice have difficulties walking. Many also suffer increasing paralysis and difficulty breathing, and then eventually suffocate to death. The degree of suffering can be extreme and appalling. Staff carried out checks theoretically to prevent the most extreme form of suffering, to kill the animals before they died an agonizing death. But for a great many animals, they arrived too late, as time and time again, dead animals were found in the cages. Any mouse considered unlikely to survive was taken out into the corridor and crudely killed on the floor, using a ballpoint pen to break the neck. New staff were trained to break necks on these extremely sick mice.
I definitely broke her. Yeah, I definitely broke her back, so I could see it go.
Shockingly, the backs of mice were sometimes broken instead of the necks, resulting in excruciating pain for the animals. Here, one member of staff failed to kill some of these mice by breaking their necks, and they can be seen writhing in agony. The mice found dead or killed during the test were counted, sealed in plastic sandwich bags, and then simply discarded in a bin. Those still alive at the end of the test were killed in this gas chamber. Over a period of time, they frantically struggled for breath. Not all died. This mouse was found to be still alive. Yet mice were not the only animals to suffer at Wickham for routine batch testing of products. Here, rabbits were restrained for pyrogenicity tests, where the aim is to see if a substance is contaminated. The substance is injected into a vein in the rabbit's ear, like this one, and a thermometer inserted into their anus. The rabbits were immobilized in these stocks for several hours at a time. Here, new rabbits became distressed and struggled to free themselves. Some rabbits had been kept here for years to be reused time and time again. Others like these were killed at the end of the test, their bodies discarded. The rabbits were housed on their own in these small, virtually barren cages. Bored and frustrated, some displayed abnormal repetitive behavior, as can be seen here, bar biting and frantically pacing. Yet it is well known that proper housing and social grouping have considerable beneficial impact on the welfare of rabbits. Sometimes problems arose with the injecting. Here, several attempts were made at inserting the needle into the rabbit's vein, increasing the stress and suffering experienced by these poor animals.
I can't. I'm quitting. I can't. You'll have to do it. It's already got 2 bloody holes in there and all.
Rabbits with injuries or damage to ear veins as a result of injecting were usually killed, like this young rabbit named Melon. The UK government is failing in its legal obligation to enforce the use of alternatives where they exist, and to ensure that, if animals are used, then it should be the minimum number and with the minimum amount of suffering. There are alternatives to the tests shown here that do not use live animals, and it is outrageous that they are not being used. The government and animal research community who defend animal testing often claim that animals are only used as an unavoidable last resort for vital medical research, and that suffering is always kept to a minimum. Yet this BUAV investigation has shown once again that this is not the case. Crude, archaic, and extremely cruel tests continue to be allowed in the UK. How many people realize the terrible suffering inflicted on animals in tests like these, just so they can have their wrinkles temporarily smoothed over? Please support the BUAV in our campaign to end these experiments.